I never planned to stay at that elite hotel, just a temporary job to pay off student loans. Then I spilled coffee on him, a Forbes-listed billionaire. Instead of firing me, he offered me a dream job. I didn't know it would change everything between us. Let me craft that introduction section for you with a natural cinematic flow in first-person narration. Hey there, my name is Maya Johnson. I'm just your average graduate student trying to make something of myself in this world that wasn't exactly built for people like me. I've always been the type to have my nose in a book, dreaming big while my bank account stayed small. If you've ever felt invisible in someone else's world, this story will show you that sometimes being overlooked is just the beginning of being truly seen. I grew up in a small apartment with my mom, who worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. She always told me education was my ticket out, and I believed her. Fast forward to my final year of grad school, drowning in student loans that seemed to multiply overnight. My part-time barista gig wasn't cutting it anymore, and my thesis deadline was looming. That's when I saw the posting. Temporary staff needed at the Monarch, the most exclusive hotel in the city. The pay was double what I was making, and the tips. Well, let's just say, the type of people who stay there don't think twice about dropping a $100 bill for carrying their designer luggage. I never planned to stay there long. Just enough shifts to pay down some debt and focus on finishing my degree. The marble floors and crystal chandeliers felt like they belonged to another universe, one where I was just passing through, invisible to the guests who barely looked up from their phones when I served them. The uniform they gave me was stiff and uncomfortable, like it was designed to make sure people like me blended into the background of their perfect world. Little did I know that spilling a cup of coffee would change the entire trajectory of my life. And not just any coffee, but coffee spilled on one of the richest men in the country. The kind of man whose name appeared on buildings and magazine covers. The kind of man who could fire me with a snap of his fingers. Instead, he offered me a job that would pull me into his world, a world I was never meant to be part of, a world where I'd learn that sometimes the most powerful people are the loneliest, and sometimes the person they need most is the one they never thought to look for. The day I met Ethan Reed started like any other at the Monarch. I'd been there exactly 3 weeks and 2 days, just long enough to memorize the coffee preferences of the regular guests, but not long enough to afford even a single night's stay myself. That morning was particularly hectic. Some tech conference had brought in an influx of Silicon Valley types, all demanding perfect service with minimal eye contact. I was balancing a tray of specialty coffees when it happened. Someone's designer luggage was left right in the walkway, and in my rush to avoid tripping, I collided with a man stepping out of the elevator. The tray tilted, and before I could catch it, hot coffee cascaded down the front of what I would later learn was a $5,000 custom suit. Time froze. The lobby fell silent. I stood there, mortified, coffee dripping from my fingers, staring at the stranger's expressionless face. I was mentally calculating how many extra shifts it would take to pay for his dry cleaning when he did something unexpected. He laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but a genuine one that reached his eyes. Well, he said, dabbing at his ruined shirt with a pocket square, I'd say this suit needed some character anyway. His name was Ethan Reed. Not that he introduced himself, he didn't need to. His face had been on the cover of Fortune magazine just the month before. 38 years old and worth billions from the tech company he'd built from his college dorm room. The kind of success story they make movies about. I'm so sorry, sir, I stammered, already anticipating my firing. I'll pay for the cleaning, I promise. He studied me for a moment, his head tilted slightly. What's your name? Maya Johnson. Maya, he repeated as if testing how it sounded. Are you always this efficient at ruining expensive clothing, or is today special? I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. First time, actually, but I'm a quick learner, so I could probably get even better at it. That made him smile. a real one that transformed his serious face. I like honesty and quick thinking. He glanced at his watch. My assistant just quit yesterday. Couldn't handle the pace, apparently. How would you feel about a temporary position? The pay is better than hotel work, I guarantee it. I thought he was joking. Or maybe this was some weird power trip, offering a job to the person who just humiliated you in public. But his eyes were serious, evaluating, like he'd spotted something in me worth investigating further. Don't you want to see my resume? I asked. I just saw everything I needed to know, he replied. You made a mistake, owned it, and didn't fall apart. Plus, he added with that hint of a smile again, anyone who can balance that many coffee cups at once clearly has skills. 24 hours later, I found myself riding up to the 50th floor of Reed Tower, clutching a temporary security badge and wondering what I'd gotten myself into. The job description was vague. Executive assistant could mean anything from managing his schedule to picking up his dry cleaning. What I didn't expect was for it to mean entering his world completely. A world where I was just passing through, until somehow, against all odds, he couldn't bear to see me leave. The Reed Technologies headquarters felt like stepping onto another planet. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city that made my stomach drop every time I looked down. Everything gleamed, glass, chrome, marble, as if dust wouldn't dare settle in Ethan Reed's domain. On my first day, a sleek-looking woman named Vivian gave me a tablet with Ethan's entire life programmed into it. He goes through assistance like normal people go through paper towels, she warned, not unkindly. Don't take it personally when it ends. But I wasn't planning on sticking around long enough to be discarded. This was temporary. Good money to help finish my degree, nothing more. I'd be back in my world soon enough. Ethan moved through life at warp speed. His mind worked faster than anyone I'd ever met, jumping between topics mid-sentence, expecting everyone to keep up. The first week was brutal. I'd collapse into bed each night, dreaming of calendar alerts and coffee orders. But something strange happened during week 2. I started anticipating his needs before he voiced them. I learned the subtle signs of when he needed space to think and when he needed someone to challenge his ideas. You're different, he said one night as we worked late, the city lights twinkling below us like earthbound stars. He didn't look up from his computer screen. Most people either fear me or want something from me. I just need this job, I replied honestly, and I'm too tired to be afraid of you. That made him look up, surprise flickering across his face before he laughed, a genuine sound I'd rarely heard in those marble hallways. As weeks turned into months, I became more than just his assistant. I was his buffer against the world, his translator for human emotions, his compass when he lost sight of what mattered. In meetings, I noticed how the room of predominantly white male executives would look past me, their eyes settling on Ethan as if I were invisible. It didn't bother me. I was used to it. What surprised me was when Ethan started purposely directing questions to me, making my voice heard. Maya thinks we should approach this differently, he'd say, forcing them to acknowledge me. It was a small thing, but it meant something. Behind his confident exterior, I glimpsed moments of loneliness that resonated with me, like when his birthday came and his phone barely rang, or when he'd work through holidays, claiming it was by choice. For someone surrounded by people constantly, he seemed remarkably alone. Don't you have friends? I asked bluntly one evening after everyone had left. I have business associates, he replied without looking up from his screen. That's not the same thing. When you have money, Maya, it's hard to know who's truly there for you. He finally met my eyes. Except you. You're probably the only person who'd be happier if I had less money and more free time. The strange thing was, he was right. I didn't care about his wealth. If anything, it created a barrier between us. A constant reminder that I was just visiting his world, not a permanent resident. The lines between professional and personal began to blur. We'd debate books we'd both read, argue about politics, share takeout at midnight while finalizing presentations. I learned he had a dry sense of humor that few people got to see. He discovered I had a talent for simplifying complex ideas, making them accessible. What I didn't admit, not even to myself, was how I looked forward to those late nights, how the office felt different when it was just the two of us, how sometimes he'd look at me in a way that made my pulse quicken before quickly looking away. But reality had a way of crashing in. At company functions, I was introduced as my assistant, never by name. When investors came, I was expected to fade into the background. And whenever we stepped outside the office bubble, the world had clear divisions about where people like him and people like me belonged. I told myself it didn't matter. This job was a stepping stone, not a destination. I was just passing through his world, collecting experiences and a paycheck. I never expected him to notice when I began to pull away. I never expected him to care, and I certainly never expected what happened next. It happened at the annual investors' dinner. I was there to make sure everything ran smoothly, dressed in a black dress I'd splurged on. One nice thing I could wear to these events where I felt perpetually underdressed. The evening had been going well until I overheard a conversation while collecting Ethan's forgotten portfolio from a side room. "Reed's got himself a pretty little diversity hire, doesn't he?" A man's voice, slightly slurred from too much expensive scotch. "Smart move these days, checks all the boxes." "I'd check her box," another replied, followed by laughter. "But you know he won't keep her around long. Just window dressing until the board meeting passes." I froze, my hand on the portfolio. Their words stung, but what hurt more was the voice that followed. "Maya's actually quite competent," Ethan's voice, but not defending me, just clarifying my usefulness, like I was a particularly efficient appliance. "She has a master's degree, gentlemen." He changed the subject, never addressing their comments directly, never shutting it down. I slipped away unnoticed, the portfolio forgotten. That night, I typed up my resignation letter. 2 weeks' notice, professionally worded, no emotion. When I handed it to him the next morning, his face showed genuine shock. "Why?" he demanded. "Is someone offering you more? I'll match it." "It's not about money," I said quietly. "I don't belong here." "That's ridiculous. You're essential to this operation." "To the operation," I repeated. "Not to you." His confusion seemed genuine. "What does that mean?" I wanted to tell him about the conversation I'd overheard, about how he'd had the chance to truly see me and failed. Instead, I just said, "It means thank you for the opportunity, but it's time for me to go." The next 2 weeks were excruciating. Ethan oscillated between trying to convince me to stay and acting coldly professional. On my last day, the awkward goodbye party, with store-bought cake and forced smiles, felt like the perfect metaphor for my time there. Almost fitting in, but not quite. Returning to my normal life felt like trying to squeeze back into clothes I'd outgrown. My tiny apartment seemed smaller, my graduate program less challenging. Everything that had once been familiar now felt slightly off, as if I'd returned from another dimension where the air was different. I'd saved enough from my time with Ethan to focus on finishing my thesis and even launch a small consulting business, using the skills I'd acquired. I specialized in helping small businesses owned by women of color navigate the corporate world, teaching them the language and customs of that other planet I'd visited. There was something satisfying about translating between worlds. The first few weeks, my phone buzzed constantly with texts from Ethan. Simple at first, asking where files were kept, how to reschedule meetings, then more personal. "The coffee here is terrible now. No one makes it right." "Had a thought about your thesis topic. Call me." "Board meeting was a disaster. Could use your perspective." I answered the work questions briefly and ignored the rest. Eventually they slowed, then stopped. I told myself it was relief I felt, not disappointment. 3 months after leaving, I saw his face on the business news. Reed Technologies stock was down. There were rumors of missed deadlines, disorganization at the top. The reporter mentioned he'd gone through 4 assistants since me. I switched off the TV, refusing to care. Then came the email. An invitation to interview for a consulting position with a major tech incubator. An opportunity that would change everything for my fledgling business. Only after accepting did I learn Ethan was on the board and had recommended me. I almost cancelled out of pride. At the interview, the director mentioned casually, "Ethan Reed speaks very highly of you. Says you see things others miss." I got the contract, didn't thank him, told myself it was just his guilty conscience. A week later, flowers arrived at my office. No card. But I knew. Just like I knew when he began supporting a scholarship for Black women in STEM at my alma mater. He never mentioned it, never sought credit. It wasn't about being seen doing good. It was about actually doing it. I still didn't call him back. Some chasms are too wide to bridge with flowers and donations. But something inside me was shifting, wondering what else might be changing on the other side of that divide. 6 months after I walked out of Reed Tower, I found myself back in its shadow. My consulting business had taken off, partly thanks to that first big contract. I was meeting a client in the coffee shop across the street when I saw him through the window. Ethan, walking alone, no security, no entourage. He looked different somehow. The sharp edges softened, the perpetual crease between his brows relaxed. He didn't see me at first. Then our eyes met through the glass, and the world around us seemed to pause. He hesitated only a moment before coming in, approaching my table with an uncertainty I'd never seen in him before. "Maya," he said, my name almost a question. "Ethan," I replied, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. My client had cancelled last minute, leaving me with no excuses. We sat in awkward silence until he finally spoke. "I've been following your success. Your business is impressive." "Thank you. I've heard things at Reed Technologies have been challenging." He laughed, a hollow sound. "That's corporate speak for total disaster. Turns out you were running more than my calendar." "You have capable people," I said diplomatically. "None of them are you." His directness caught me off guard. "I didn't understand what you meant that day, about belonging to the operation, not to me. I get it now." I waited, letting him find the words. "I let those men talk about you that night because I was afraid of rocking the boat. I valued their money over your dignity." His voice dropped lower. "I've spent months thinking about all the times I let you be invisible when you were the most important person in the room." The confession hung between us. I'd imagined this moment, but never expected the raw vulnerability in his eyes. "I'm not asking you to come back," he continued. "Your business is making a real difference, but I'm asking for a chance to show you I've changed." That day marked the beginning of Ethan's true transformation. Not with grand gestures, but with consistent actions. He asked me to consult on Reed Technologies' diversity initiatives, offering market rate, not charity. He listened more than he spoke in those meetings, and when an old investor made a dismissive comment about diversity hires, Ethan showed him the door, regardless of the millions at stake. Watching him dismantle his own privilege, piece by piece, was like witnessing someone learn to walk again after an injury. Painful, but purposeful. For the first time, I saw him building a world where I might actually belong. Our professional relationship gradually rebuilt itself on new foundations. We met weekly to discuss the diversity initiative, always in public places, always strictly business. But something had shifted between us, a current running beneath our polite exchanges, charged with unspoken possibilities. 3 months into our new arrangement, Ethan asked me to dinner. Not at some exclusive restaurant where I'd feel out of place, but at a small Ethiopian place in my neighborhood. We sat on low stools, eating with our hands, talking until the owner politely mentioned they needed to close. I don't want to be just your client anymore, he said as we walked through the cool night air. What do you want to be? I asked, though I already knew. Whatever you'll allow, he replied. But I need you to know something first. You were never just passing through my world, Maya. You changed it completely. I stopped walking. I can't go back to being invisible, Ethan, not even for you. I don't want you to go back to anything, he said. I want us to create something new. Together. Our relationship evolved slowly, deliberately. I maintained my independence, my business, my voice. He learned to navigate my world as much as I had navigated his. We faced raised eyebrows and whispers, the billionaire and the black consultant who had once been his assistant. People crafted narratives about us that had nothing to do with reality. The first time he joined my family for Sunday dinner, my mother pulled no punches. Your money doesn't impress me, she told him, passing the cornbread. How you treat my daughter does. That's exactly right, Mrs. Johnson, he replied, earning a tiny nod of approval. The challenges came from all sides. His board members made subtle suggestions about appropriate relationships. My friends worried I'd lose myself in his orbit. We weathered each storm together, finding strength in the deliberate choice we made each day to bridge our different worlds. I never planned to fall in love with you, I told him one night as we stood on his balcony. The city spread out before us like a carpet of stars. It wasn't part of the plan. The best things never are, he said, pulling me close. I spent my life planning every detail until you spilled coffee on my perfect schedule. We weren't just a love story. We were a revolution in small, everyday choices, in the way he learned to see through my eyes, and I through his, in the way we built something neither of us could have created alone. Looking back now, I sometimes marvel at the journey that brought us here. Ethan and I have created a life that exists between worlds, where I still run my consulting firm, now expanded to help hundreds of women like me, and he still builds his empire, but with new purpose and perspective. We share a home with windows that face both downtown where he works and the neighborhood where I grew up. A perfect metaphor for the balance we've struck. Not without effort, not without setbacks, but with unwavering commitment to seeing each other fully. The questions still come, at galas, in boardrooms, even in line at the grocery store. How did you two meet? They ask, expecting some fairy tale. I simply smile and say, I spilled coffee on him, and he couldn't get the stain out of his life. Love found me when I wasn't looking, in the most unlikely person, at the moment I was ready to walk away. Not because I was passing through his world, but because I refused to stay in it on anyone's terms but my own. That's the secret I never expected to learn in the shadow of billion-dollar deals and corporate power plays. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't begging someone to stay, but creating a world where they truly belong. A world you build together, one honest conversation at a time. Retry us. If you've made it this far in my story, I want you to take something away with you, something more valuable than any business deal or billion-dollar portfolio. Your worth isn't determined by someone else's world. Sometimes walking away is the only way they'll learn to run after you. Don't settle for being a visitor in someone's life. Demand to be an equal citizen in their heart. I never expected a spilled coffee to change my life's direction. I certainly never expected a man like Ethan Reed to transform his entire world just to make room for me in it. But that's the thing about real love. It doesn't ask you to shrink, it challenges you both to grow. Whether you're still searching for your person or wondering if the one you have sees you completely, remember this: you deserve to be seen. Not just as useful or convenient or decorative, but as essential, irreplaceable, worth changing for. Hit subscribe if this story resonated with you. Share it with someone who needs reminding of their value. And remember, in a world that often makes us feel invisible, the greatest act of rebellion is to stand firmly in your worth and refuse to budge until someone truly sees you. Not just passing through, but home at last.